Álvarez could be on his way out of this football club. The saga continues to rumble on. The rumours are growing, with PSG being very much interested in the Argentinian Julián Álvarez. Now, I think City are very much in the driving seat here. We have complete control over this situation. Now, I know a lot of City fans out there, quite a few, are quite comfortable with the idea of losing Julián Álvarez. Now, for me, I'm not comfortable in the slightest. I think there's a real quality player sat there that we've not even seen the best of yet. I think we've seen glimpses of Julián Álvarez at the start of last season, very much so. And I think there are a lot of City fans out there that do play favouritism, and I want to stress that's not something you're going to get on this channel. Last season, we see so many City fans really hanging out to dry the likes of Kyle Walker and Julián Álvarez, while on the other hand, valiantly defending Jack Grealish. I don't quite understand how you can defend Jack Grealish, yet really stick the knife in, especially Julián Álvarez. The Walker, I kind of get it. He's been up and down last season for Manchester City. Moments of quality, real moments of lapses of concentration from Kyle Walker. Understandable, but the Álvarez hate that I saw last season was really, it disgruntled me. It disgruntled me, and it really didn't bode well with me when I saw the defending of Jack Grealish. Now, I think Jack Grealish should be equally defended, by the way. I just feel like there should be no favouritism on players. If you're popping on a City shirt, then they deserve defending. We've got to find reasons why they may work. Why are the board signing these players? Why is Pep interested in playing Álvarez so frequently, with his minutes being so dominant last season? He had the 9th most minutes in a Manchester City shirt. So if I quickly pull up his minutes for you here, you can see last season that those 3,481 minutes is the 9th most in the Manchester City squad last season. I know 9th doesn't sound much, but that puts you as predominantly a starting 11 player, because you're 9th. You're not 13th, 14th, you're 9th. You're in the first 11 effectively for the majority of the season. Started 39 matches. You start to see a little bit of the reason why he may be a bit frustrated, coming off 20 times during the course of the season, and over the course of last season getting 19 goals and 13 assists, with a total goal contribution of 32 goals from 52 appearances, which I think is pretty good going. Now, I think what Álvarez may be concerned about is the idea of minutes is one thing, but big games is another thing, okay? So I think the minutes being good, I think he should be reasonably happy. But he wanted to be there for the final games of the season. You're talking about he got extra time against Real Madrid in the second leg. He played 3 minutes in the first leg against Real Madrid, and in the final 4 games of the Premier League campaign, he played 17 minutes. He came on for the 4th to last game of the season for 8 minutes, 3rd to last game of the season for 8 minutes, and against Spurs away, he came on for an insulting, quite an offensive, which happens to a lot of players. You have to accept that's part of the game. Substitutions, just the action of a substitution can be tactical, a little bit of a time-wasting tactic there. He came on for 1 minute. Which is, yeah, a little bit, yeah, you can be a bit embarrassed coming on as a player, especially a World Cup winner like Julián Álvarez. I understand that. But there are other matches. Me as a City fan, and I think most level-headed City fans will look at last season and go, Álvarez did his part, mate. There are other matches over the course of a season that you played a huge role in our success, especially in the first half of the season, maybe the first third. Oh, he was, killer instinct was there, creative numbers through the roof. At first, that number 10 role was working. It was working, and defenders very quickly found out. I think by the time it got into November, Álvarez was being nullified. And very much then we started to hear the complaints of other City fans suggesting that Álvarez just isn't working. It was working. It definitely was. And it got us off to a great start with 6 wins out of 6, of which Álvarez started all 6 as well. So it was a fantastic start to the idea of Álvarez playing as a number 10 role. Eventually, he started to feel a little bit shoehorned in, and especially because of the absence of Kevin De Bruyne as well. It was very much needed, but it worked initially. I remember the Red Star Belgrade game, the first Champions League game of the season. That link-up play with Haaland was devastating, to the point where Álvarez knocks it into Haaland. Haaland holds it up, a little round the corner. He didn't even need to look, Haaland. He just knew where Álvarez was running over his shoulder, knocks it into Alvarez's path. Alvarez takes it around the goalkeeper and squeezes it into that incredibly tight angle. A lovely, lovely goal. Fantastic link-up play between our number 9 and our number 10 in that game. It worked. It stopped working, though, and I think that's why City fans got a bit frustrated with Alvarez over the course of the season. Understandable. I still think City control this situation, though. I have to stress that even though PSG are reportedly increasing their interest to Alvarez, there's so many points that I want to make to the fact that, okay, he's in Paris right now. I think that's where a lot of these rumours have surfaced from. Just people putting 2 and 2 together again and maybe getting 5 once again seems to be the maths that the journalists like to do nowadays, is over-egg certain situations. He's in the Olympics right now for Argentina, and it happens to be in Paris, and now he was being linked with PSG. I don't think that's a coincidence. There is some sense to it, to be fair to the journalists that are saying these things, because it makes the deal a little bit easier. Representatives of PSG could quite easily meet representatives of Alvarez and Alvarez himself in spare time away from Olympics to make this deal happen. So there is a possibility that it could happen. But if the argument for me that Alvarez wants to feel loved, he wants to feel a big game player, he wants to feel that love, headline grabbing effectively. Now, I don't think Alvarez strikes me as the type to grab headlines certainly not off the field headlines, match winning headlines, I think what Alvarez wants, which is fair enough. But you've got to look at what PSG have been doing recently. You know, the Kolo Muani was signed last September at the end of the 2023 transfer window for 95 million euros. PSG playing a centre forward that they signed, a versatile centre forward, Muani, but still predominantly a centre forward. Gonçalo Ramos from Benfica for 65 million euros was signed in January, another centre forward, which, by the way, 65 million was substantially lower than the buyout clause that Benfica had for Gonçalo Ramos. So there's a little side note to the importance of buyout clauses and release clauses. They don't always have to be triggered, and you can get a lot lower deal than you can. So there's a little hope in the Bruno Guimaraes situation. Very unlikely, by the way, a totally separate point, but you never know. 65 million for Ramos going into PSG. So there's 2 centre forwards that are already at PSG, okay, that they've spent well over 150 million euros on, okay? The price for Alvarez is going to be 60 million pounds plus 17 million add-ons. 77 million pounds City are demanding, and rightly so. Let's not forget, they've also been targeting Victor Osimhen. So if they're going to Victor Osimhen, they've already got 2 centre forwards. Victor Osimhen deal sounds like it's falling through, but that's not the point. The fact that it's fallen through means that they were prioritising him ahead of Alvarez. So how loved do you want to feel in a PSG shirt if Victor Osimhen was prioritised ahead of Julián Álvarez? You've got Ramos, who was already there, and Muani, who's already there. You're going into a worse situation than you're in right now if you're Julián Álvarez, because there's players already ahead of you. You've got Haaland ahead of you, and that is the example of Manchester City being a victim of our own success, a victim of our own quality players and our own transfer business. Well, I know a lot of City fans right now are fuming at the lack of transfer activity going on. Understandable, it's not very exciting, I can testify to that. I would like City to be involved in a little bit more incomings. It's not easy when you've got the players that we've got. How do you persuade players? We've seen the example with Rodri already. Who wants to be Rodri's number 2? Stefan Ortega was this close to leaving, and he was very much hinting that he's like, I want to play more or I'm off, because he wants to be number 2. Who wants to be number 2 to Erling Haaland? How do you persuade these players to come in knowing, right, am I going to get ahead of Haaland? No, you're not. Haaland's going to play. I'm sorry, he's going to play. Defensive midfielder, or a number 8, let's say. Who's going to come in knowing that they may have that versatility and the number 8 may save them in that persuasion, because they may say, well, you'll play with Rodri, not when Rodri doesn't play. Same problem, though. How do you persuade a player knowing Rodri's the main man? Let's not beat around the bush here. Rodri's the main man. Ederson was number 1 last season. It's persuading these players to become number 2, and Alvarez was persuaded, and it was a good job. And it brings me back to the comments that Pep made after the Forest match last season, where Pep Guardiola said, having Alvarez not playing as well, being asked the question, Pep Guardiola, about Alvarez and the minutes that he's getting, Pep said he always has good behaviour, playing, not playing, being a world champion or not. Always the same. He has the perfect dose of disappointment when he doesn't play, but is always ready for the opportunity. And I think that's Pep encapsulated what City need as a squad player and a world-class squad player perfectly with that statement. The perfect dose of disappointment, because there's going to be a lot of that. For every single City player, there's only I could count them on one hand, the ones that are going to come out at the end of the next season knowing that they're satisfied with the amount of minutes that they're going to get. The rest of them, they're all going to be hungry, and that's a good thing. They're all going to be craving more minutes. The problem is when they get so starved of minutes that they start angling for moves away from the football club. That's when it gets difficult. But City are in the driving seat here because Alvarez has a contract until 2028. He's only extended it in March of 2023. So City are absolutely in the driving seat here. And asking for 77 million, for me, is a little bit on the cheap side. Because I think there's an absolute world-class player there. And we haven't seen enough of him as a centre-forward. When he plays in his favourite position as an out-and-out number 9, what a player he looks like. A fox in the box. He gets goals. He hits the target. He's brilliant. He's a real eye for goal. And he's a bit different. He offers something different to Erling Haaland. He will drop and come and collect that ball. He can do the false 9 role a little bit better, well, a lot better than Erling Haaland can. But, I mean, can they play together next season? Probably not, especially if Kevin De Bruyne and Phil Foden are fit. There ain't very little chance of Alvarez getting in that side, unfortunately, and I think that's the problem. Now, can you spend next season hoping that Kevin De Bruyne gets injured so you get more game time, or Erling Haaland gets injured and then you're definitely going to get game time? The problem for City is that if he hands in a transfer request, which would surprise me, it would really surprise me because he doesn't seem the type. He seems quite respectful. He seems like a very respectful human being. I think he understands that the club have given him quite a large amount of opportunities. We put him on the map. Let's be straight. We took him from River Plate and bang. We made a big fucking, what was it, like a 40-minute documentary about him. You know what I mean? The club have shown a lot of respect to Julián Álvarez. And I recommend going and watching that documentary because it was a fascinating watch. Really, really enjoyed that. I love Álvarez. I think there's an absolute player there. But he might have to bide his time again, and he might get the minutes here and there. Now, from City's perspective, if we were to sell Julián Álvarez now, because he hands in a transfer request, I'm not sure we would. I just don't think we would, especially considering he's gone to the Olympics, which means the decision is further away. If we can somehow go to Paris ourselves and sit down with Álvarez and his representatives and say, what's your decision, mate? It's decision time. It is decision time right now. Make up your mind. Are you handing in a transfer request? Do you want to leave? And if not, are you staying at Manchester City? And are you going to buckle down, get on with it, head down, crack on, accept that there's going to be times when you don't play and make the most of the opportunities when you do play? Because that's the type of squad player we need at Manchester City. And it's a difficult persuasion for Manchester City to do that to a player of this calibre. If we can do that, fantastic. But the debate comes into how close to the end of the transfer window will City allow this to go with the idea of selling Álvarez with, what, a week to go in the transfer market? How long do we let it go? Because we'll need a replacement. Because if we let Álvarez go, we've got one out-and-out number 9. Yes, we've got Bernardo Silva could play there. We've got Oscar Bob who's proven himself there. We've got Phil Foden who can play there. All very versatile, but not a little bit square peg in a round hole feel to it. And that's exactly what Álvarez was last season. He was a square peg in a round hole that eventually wore it out. Eventually that hole became completely misshapen and it didn't work eventually. And City lacked a lot of creativity. The creativity spiked when Kevin De Bruyne came back, because of his intelligence in those roles, in those tight spaces. Álvarez was stifled out of a lot of games. If Pep can somehow magically find a role for Álvarez with Haaland on the pitch, I just don't see it. I don't see it working at all. I do see Álvarez still being in a Manchester City shirt come the start of next season, though. I really feel like he will stay, and I do think City are in the driving seat in this one. But what do you think, Blues? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe to Typical City, and I'll see you in the next one.
This is Typical City now.